Hello, this is video number 34, and it is chapter 6, section 6. And it is our second way of dividing. This is dividing radicals with two terms in the denominator. Remember that a term is separated with a plus or minus sign, right? So here is an example of what we're talking about. If we have something like 6 over rad 5 plus 2. These are two separate terms separated with a plus or minus sign. So this has two terms in the denominator. 6 over 2 rad 5. These are attached to each other with multiplication. So this is only one term in the denominator, right? So we're focusing not on this type, but on this type today. And the way you're going to do this, you're going to divide radicals with two terms in the denominator using something called a conjugate. And so that's the first thing we have to do is define that word. So the conjugate, oh, there's an E on there. The conjugate is the denominator with the middle sign changed. And only the middle sign. So that's the definition, the conjugate with the middle sign changed. I want to highlight that. You should highlight that on your page. It should stand out somewhere. Okay, put a box around it if you want, put stars around it. I don't care. Make sure that it stands out somewhere. And so just to give you an idea on the problem I wrote down over here on the left-hand side, the denominator is 5 plus radical 2. So the conjugate to this would be rad 5 minus 2. It's exactly the same thing with this middle sign changed, okay? So if you had 6 over negative rad 2 plus rad, we'll make that a 4. I don't want the numbers to be too similar. The conjugate to this is still negative rad 2 because only the middle sign is changed, minus rad 4. Okay, so you're taking the original denominator and only changing that middle sign. If you do not do this, you will never get these problems correct. The whole point is to basically create a difference of squares, right? If remember when we had things like x plus 3 times x minus 3, and when you FOIL, you get x squared minus 3x plus 3x minus 9. These things cancel out. Well, that's the whole idea here, is to get those two middle terms to cancel out, and then the ones on the ends are perfect squares. So even if you have a radical, it's a perfect square, so it's reducible. Okay, so you're always going to multiply by the conjugate. So let's take a look at how this is going to happen. So if we have a problem, we're going to actually use that one. If we have radical 6 over rad 5 plus rad 6, what you're going to do is identify the conjugate, which is rad 5 minus rad 6, and you're going to use that on the top and the bottom. Remember, you can only multiply or divide by 1, so the fraction has to be exactly the same on the top and bottom. Now, if you have more than two terms or more, put them in parentheses so you remember if you're supposed to FOIL or distribute. So even the bottom, put it in parens. All right, we're going to distribute the top. That's a rad 30 minus rad 36. And then when I do the bottom, I'm going to do it right under there and then transport these simplified ones. So I have rad 25 minus rad 30 plus rad 30 minus rad 36. So these two cancel each other out. Rad 25 is just a 5. Minus rad 36 is minus 6. And that reduces to a negative 1. So now you're going to simplify, if you can. Simplify, if possible. And that means the radicals and any like terms. Okay, so here we know rad 30 doesn't reduce. Let me change my color there. I'm starving. I need to eat some food. I think I have leftover lasagna in the fridge. I'm going to eat that. It sounds good. All right, so I love to eat, by the way. All right, so we have a rad 30 that doesn't reduce. Well, rad 36 is just plain 6. And then in the denominator, 5 minus 6 is a negative 1. Now, just another note, you're never going to leave a leading negative in the denominator. Oh, that's not going to fit. Okay, so this is really, if I simplify this now, I have rad 30 over negative 1 minus 6 over negative 1, or plus a negative 6. All right, so we're going to simplify these. That positive over a negative is a negative rad 30. Negative over a negative is a positive. And so that is the answer to this problem. So be careful. If there's a negative here, essentially what's happening is you're just changing all your signs in your numerator. And then your denominator becomes positive. In this case, I don't need to see that it's over 1. I mean, it means the same thing. But if this was over 7, you'd have to keep that positive 7 in the denominator. Okay? All right, the next one. That's the idea of using the conjugate. This one's going to have some variables in it. So we have rad x over rad x minus 6. Okay, so the conjugate. Pause, write it down, and then come back. All right, the conjugate denominator with the middle sign change should look like rad x plus 6. Top and bottom, put everything with 2 terms or more in parentheses, and then let's distribute. So we get a rad x squared plus, 6 radical x. I was going to do very much the wrong thing there. Oops, need a pen. All right, so 6 rad x. And then in the denominator, again, you're going to get rad x squared plus 6 rad x minus 6 rad x minus 36. These will cancel. This is a perfect square, so the radical goes away. So all I have left in my denominator is x minus 36. Can I simplify any of my radicals? Well, sure. This one will reduce to x. This one is already reduced. So we have x minus 6 rad x over x minus 36. Now let me state, you cannot cancel any of these. And it's not cancelable because you can only cancel multiplication. And these are added and subtracted. Also, these are not like terms because this one's got a rad x on it and this one does not. So this is actually the answer to this. It looks weird and kids want to simplify the 6 into the 36 or just cancel these x's out. You can't do that. That is not a legal step. So make sure that you leave your answer looking just the way mine does there. All right, let's take a look at one more, just a little bit more complex, where you're going to have to FOIL the top, FOIL the bottom. There's lots to do. So we have 2 rad y plus 5 over 3 plus radical y. All right, well, write down your conjugate. All right, so that is 3 minus rad y, top and bottom, and then anything with 2 or more terms goes into parentheses. Okay, so we are going to FOIL everything out, top and bottom. So I get a 6 radical y minus 2 rad y squared plus 15 minus 5 radical y over 9 minus 3 rad y plus 3 rad y minus rad y squared. All right, now let's simplify anything we can. So in the top, first term's okay. This one's going to simplify to just negative 2y. This one's okay, and this one's okay. So now I have 6 rad y minus 2y plus 15 minus 5y. Well, now I have some like terms here. So I have 6 rad y plus 15 minus 7y. I was going to put a rad y. That would be incorrect. 7y. All right, so that's my numerator. Denominator, I'll do in purple, so it's a little different color. These are going to cancel. This guy is going to become just a y. So in my denominator, I have 9 minus y, and that's not reducible. I also don't have a leading negative, so I don't need to worry about that. And then I need to look at if I can factor anything out, and really I can't. There's nothing, I can't factor anything out of the bottom, 9 and a y. So therefore there's nothing on the top. I have no like terms. So this is the simplified version of that. Okay. So that is dividing radicals using a conjugate. Remember, the conjugate is your denominator with the middle sign squared. It's going to come back when we do imaginary numbers. All right. Toodaloo, guys.